Welcome to this week's Raw Recap. As always in these recap videos, we go over everything you need to know about this important episode of WWE, and as always, you guys can leave me your thoughts down in the comments below, and at the end of the video, as always, I do leave my thoughts and how I rate the show. But, like I said, as always, leave me your thoughts down in the comments below. But before we get anywhere into the video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload. And as always, go follow the socials. The links to those are always in the description of every video. That includes my Instagram account, my X account. Do all that. Helps me out a ton. Let's get right on into today's video. Alright, so we kicked off the show with John Cena. He is here in his hometown of Springfield, Massachusetts, and that's kind of what he says for the first few lines there. He thanks everybody for what they've given to him, and he just talks about really his origins in Springfield, talking about how he played football just up the street, talking about how he's had, basically his whole life, his whole first half of his life, is pretty much spent there. So that's pretty much what he was trying to get the point of there, just talking about his origins. But then he gets to the fact of what Alicia Taylor, who is obviously the ring announcer, what she said when she was introducing Cena. He says one of the few words that really stood out to me was the last real champion, and that stands out to me because that is what Brock Lesnar is trying to destroy. He's trying to destroy the words of he's trying to destroy the words and the relevance of the last real champion, who is me. Now he says. Then he goes on with, Am I afraid? Yes. Am I a coward? No. Will I back down? Will I give up? No. I will give everything that I have in this match at WrestlePalooza against Brock Lesnar, and we will take the fight to the beast. And he also asked the question of, well, some people may ask, why do I do it? And why I do it is because of this. And when he says all that, the crowd is chanting, "Thank you, Cena," and he says, that is why I say yes. That is why I challenge opponents I don't back down from a fight, because of those people chanting in the crowd right now. So that was really everything that sums up this entire promo. I think for the most part it was very good. You could genuinely feel, there's something you could really feel about what Cena was saying, just how he was saying it. He was definitely aggressive in some ways, but also it was very meaningful, and you could definitely feel something. Now, what would have made this better is obviously, yes, an appearance from Brock Lesnar, because it really does feel like they are relying just on the legacy between Brock and Cena, which is fine. It is absolutely fine. I would have just liked some sort of build, which they actually do in this promo. They do give us something to really look at, in the sense of giving Lesnar a motive for really going after Cena currently, because in that promo, John said, obviously, Brock's coming after me because he wants to destroy the last real champion. So yeah, it does give Brock a motive for taking out Cena, but it would mean more if Brock Lesnar himself said that, but that's just coming from Cena. But I mean, it is what it is, and like I said, for the most part, this promo was good. There's nothing about the promo. It's just about me kind of just giving my thoughts on the overall feud, because like I said, it just has not been very good. But like I said, this promo, it did definitely help to that feud. But yeah, going back to this overall promo, man, great opener, great promo. I overall enjoyed this one. Alright, and now we did move on to Roxanne Perez versus Lyra Valkyria, and this was a bit of an interesting one, but mainly for the ending, which we'll get to in a few moments here. Now, as far as this overall match goes, it was just your average match. I really don't think there was nothing that was worth highlighting. It wasn't a bad match in any way, but it just wasn't anything too special. It's just, as you'd expect, it's a mid-card match, and it delivered as expected to be a mid-card match. There's nothing really worth noting here. Nothing really special happened in the match itself, of course. We did see the Raquel Rodriguez, she did get thrown out during the match, but she did obviously come out later on, which again we'll get to in a few moments here. But in the end, obviously in this match, we did see a Nightwing from Lyra Valkyria, and she did take out Roxanne Perez. And then we did see Raquel come back out, and then she helped out Roxanne Perez beat up Lyra after the match. Roxanne hit a Pop Rocks on her, and then shortly after, we saw the return of Bayley. Now, I just want to keep on that topic for a second, because why are we having Bayley return like this? There was zero whatsoever of a pop, and honestly, yes, it was a surprise return. I don't think anybody was expecting that, but man, I don't think this was the right place to have her return, if you ask me. I think this was a shitty place to have her return, and that's all I'm going to say. I don't think this was worth having Bayley return here, and that's what ended up happening, which is, I don't like that idea of having Bayley return here. Yeah, fine. You think this is the right time to have her return? Well, maybe it's just not the right day. This was not the episode of Raw or any whatsoever, or not match, just anything. It was not the right time to have her freaking return. That's all I'm going to say, and I'm going to leave it at that. Now, yes, she comes out and helps out Lyra Valkyria. Then she starts after she helps her out. She goes around and starts hugging everybody. She hugs the commentators. She actually gives Corey Graves a kiss. So Corey Graves is he's gonna handle some stuff with Carmella for that one. I know that for sure. Then she went around and hugged the referee, even hugged a cameraman, hugged a bunch of fans. So it's gonna be it's interesting with this new Bayley character. I mean, it's like alter ego. There's like the hugging side of Bayley, and then it looks like there may be like the sick and twisted type of Bayley. I don't really know yet. That's kind of what it's seeming like. But yeah, as far as the overall match, like I said, it wasn't anything special, and like I said, I do not think this was the right place to have Bayley return yet, but it is what it is, and it happened. But yeah, that's all there is to cover. Alright, and now we moved on to Kofi Kingston versus Penta, and as you'd expect, man, it's just like any other Penta versus any member of the New Day match that we've really seen. The only thing that was really cool about this match was the springboard, nasty looking freaking Mexican destroyer by Penta to Kofi Kingston to end the match. Hit that 1-2-3, Penta gets that win. But man, overall, it's just nothing crazy, man. We've seen matches from Penta and members against the New Day constantly, and every time they're just nothing special. There's no storyline that goes good with it, so I really could care less, honestly. And I've said it many times, Penta really needs to get out of the New Day vortex, and that's really all I have to say about this one. Alright, now we jump into CM Punk and AJ Lee when they face off, not in a match, just a face-off promo between Seth Rollins and Becky Lynch. This was a deep freaking segment, if you ask me, man. We're going to try to sum it up as best as we can here. So, CM Punk really, he says the question of, well, what happens on Saturday and what happens when your guys' egos get in the way of each other? And Seth Rollins builds off of that, and then we kind of build up to the entire, that question really builds up the entire promo. Seth replies with saying that you're the only one that really knows, that really knows much about the ego, and, at Sunday, on Saturday, there's, our connection between me and my wife is going to stay basically the same. That's pretty much kind of what he basically says there. And then we kind of jump in a little bit later on from that. And then this is where things kind of get pretty freaking serious, or at least funny and kind of serious if you ask me. We do see AJ Lee say how, sometimes she can be a little crazy in matches, and sometimes she can make some crazy decisions, and she says that sometimes she can even shank a chick. If you don't know what that means, I'm not going to explain it. If you know, it's really one of those things. If you know, you know. But yeah, that was kind of pretty crazy if you ask me. But then Seth Rollins does say, well, AJ, you better watch out, because on Saturday, sometimes Punk, he likes to leave when things aren't representing him or doing great for him. So you better watch out on Saturday. And that was a deep freaking line if you ask me. And then that's what leads to AJ Lee slapping Seth Rollins. And then Seth says, well, I wouldn't lay my hands on a woman, but I know somebody who will. Becky Lynch looks at him, and then, then they kind of argue a little bit there while AJ and Punk just look on. And then Becky leaves the ring, which we thought, I didn't at the time think this was a setup, but it actually turned out to be a setup, because then Seth Rollins, he had pushed Punk out of the way, rolled out of the ring, and then distracted Punk, and then Becky Lynch came back in the ring and manhandle slammed AJ Lee, and then that's pretty much it from there, and that is the end of the segment. There was a lot more that was said. I just think those were the main really points, but it was overall a great promo, great segment, and a great freaking final segment to really end, to really cap the feud off before we actually reach the actual match. So man, I think this was great, and yeah, that's really all I have to say here. It was a great segment, great promo between these competitors, and overall very freaking awesome. Alright, and now we moved on to El Grande Americano versus Dragon Lee. Now, was it really one El Grande? No, there was actually multiple El Grandes, which we're going to get into right now. So inevitably in this match, we did see, was it last week? I don't remember if it was actually last week, but there was another Americano that came out, who also came out, I believe, like I said, it was last week. So he came out and tried to help out Americano. He actually did help him out, but El Grande went for the cover, and Dragon Lee did kick out at 2. And then that El Grande Americano went under the ring because AJ Styles came out to take him out. AJ Styles did inevitably end up taking him out when he followed him underneath the ring. But then we saw another El Grande Americano, so the third El Grande. And then he is the one that inevitably helps out El Grande Americano, who was actually in the match. And then El Grande does pick up the win by tapping out Dragon Lee. Now, obviously, this was, I mean, honestly, the overall match was actually a decent match between just El Grande and Dragon Lee. But obviously, I am waiting for until we actually finally get all three El Grandes in one match, like in a triple, and not a triple threat, in like a 6-man tag team match eventually. Obviously, the El Grandes team up, and eventually, that's kind of just what I'm waiting for. And obviously, we're going to get it soon. But yeah, obviously, very cool to see all the El Grandes back or together, of course, because obviously we haven't really seen all three El Grandes in a minute. I mean, we obviously see the one El Grande, but we don't usually see them all together in the same building usually, so that was pretty cool. That's really all there is to note here. And like I said, it's going to be awesome once the El Grandes actually team up all at once together. But that's really all there is to cover here. Alright, and now we did finally reach our main event. Now, I do want to explain really how we did get to our main event here. So, our main event did take place between LA Knight and Jimmy Uso versus Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. Now, the way we got to the LA Knight and Jimmy Uso teaming up is because, well, Jimmy was pretty much fed up with Jay not connecting with Knight, kind of just being pissed at him, even though, LA Knight just didn't really mean some of the things that he did to Jay, basically. And then inevitably, Jimmy does do it out of spite and does team up with LA Knight, who Jey Uso does, he's not a big fan of. So that's kind of how we got here. I just wanted to clear that up. That was kind of showcased throughout the entire night before this match actually happened. But now let's resurface and get right back to this match. So yes, we do have this match. Jimmy Uso and LA Knight team up against Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. Now in this match, as you can expect, it was obviously a good match. There wasn't anything that was boring. In fact, I'm actually very intrigued with the whole storyline with Jey Uso and potentially even a heel turn from Jey Uso or LA Knight or just the Usos potentially splitting up. There's lots of ways. There's lots of scenarios that this feud is really built. So I'm really a big fan of that. A really good amount of controversial scenarios that this feud can overall end up with, which, like I said, I'm actually a big fan of that. But obviously in this match, inevitably we do actually see Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed win, but it was weird in the sense that Jimmy Uso was the one getting pinned, seeing as that Jimmy Uso does have a match with his brother Jey Uso at WrestlePalooza when he teams up with Jay and goes in a tag team match with up against Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. So it's kind of weird that they had him get pinned here and not LA Knight, but it is what it is. I just think that was a little bit weird. And then at the end of the match, once the match was over, we did see a post-match attack on Jimmy Uso by the Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker. And then inevitably Jey Uso does come out, helps Jimmy Uso out, takes out Bronson Reed and Braun Breaker with a steel chair. And then then Jey Uso goes over to Jimmy Uso, checks on him, but then LA Knight gets back in the ring, sees that steel chair laying in the ring, picks it up, doesn't swing it, but Jey Uso turns around and does see that LA Knight has that chair in his hand and saw that he was about to whack him with it, or he was at least thinking about it. But then inevitably LA Knight does drop that chair, and then Jey Uso and LA Knight do shake hands. Jey Uso goes back to Jimmy Uso, but then LA Knight turns him around and hits him with that gnarly BFT, gives Jimmy Uso a little signal, and then that is the end of the show there. So honestly, man, I am really loving this freaking feud. I love this match. I really love the post match from this segment, man. It was very awesome. I think this whole feud with LA Knight and Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso is freaking awesome. Like I said, there's so many ways that this could go, and so many good ways that it can go. It can shake a lot of things up, and I freaking love it that it is this high caliber of a feud that it can do many things. I'm really a big fan of that. Love this feud, man. Like I keep saying. But yeah, that is really it here. But overall, man, what a great freaking way to end the night. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, well, that is going to end the night. As always, I do hope you guys did enjoy. And as far as this episode of Raw, man, I do actually think this was a solid one. There was a majority of things in here that, I just wasn't a big fan of. But there was also some things in here that kind of made up for it, like the main event. I actually liked the main event, if you ask me. It definitely helped improve that storyline specifically. But overall, man, I do think this was a solid episode of Raw. As always, though, be sure to leave me your thoughts down in the comments below. And as always, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you never miss an upload. And go follow the socials. The links to those are in the description of this video. The socials do include my Instagram account, my X account. Go follow those, do all that. Helps me out a ton. And I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.
I dream of